telly. Endless human trash. Let's do something fun.
It's not, I'm busy researching, okay? In fact, actually, I may have just found my Grail watch.
Oh, just buy it and be done with it. So boring.
Yeah, but it's expensive, okay? I gotta make sure it's the right one. Besides, we're not all millionaire movie stars like you who get tons of free swag, okay, Hugo?
Why don't you sell one of your ghastly Rolexes? They're just so common.
I'm not even gonna respond to that, okay? Not even gonna respond to that.
Oh, darling, don't be such a boring rotter. Let's celebrate and pop some champers. Or vodka. Yay, vodka. Love some vodka.
What are we celebrating?
Well, I just got my Meg 2 money. And you finally found your Grail.
You were in the Meg 2? As in Meg 2? The sequel to Meg, The Meg, with Jason Statham.
It's a lovely little Cockney chap, but I can never understand a bloody word he says.
Wait, so you're giving me a hard time over my choices of watches while you're in some schlocky movie about a giant shark? What happened to Shakespeare in the Park? Huh?
I'm saving old Shakesy baby and his lovely plays for my golden years, like Al Pacino.
Al Pacino. Yeah, alright, sure. Al Pacino. Okay, fine. One drink, just one drink. But you're buying, and keep your claws off my watch collection, especially my Santos, okay?
A few minutes later.
Another 5 shots of tequila for moi. Ooh, let's do mezcal. Champers for everybody.
Ja, doe maar, Piggy. Ja, doe maar. Oh my God, what happened? What happened? Oh, my head. My head. Oh, I need to get to work. What time is it? Oh, not again. Not again. Hugo! Okay, hi guys, and welcome to the show. I'll start off with a wristwatch check. It is summertime, so I am wearing my beloved Azzurro Squale 1521 on the Riscati Watch Club rubber strap. This is the waffle one. What can I say that I haven't said 1,000 times about this watch, but yeah, it still brings a smile to my face every time I look at it. So what am I going to discuss today? Oh, I have quite a few comments and little things I want to address regarding my own collecting and the response to some of your feedback as well. Also, I think I found my Grail watch. More on that later on, but of course, you know, that's the problem. It's very expensive. So if you have missed my previous video, I'll leave a link here. Let me just quickly fill you in. So I'm currently scaling back my collection in a purge, the scale of which unseen on this channel before. I have enacted a strictly blood in, blood out policy, so if I do buy a watch, 2 or 3 pieces must go to make way for it. And this is then combined with selling off anything I do not tend to wear as much. So let's just say this year's State of the Collection in December will be very different and perhaps the most interesting one yet. So the next thing I've found useful and I recommend is identifying the weak points in one's collecting habits. Please do share yours down below. This can be as simple as late night impulse buys on eBay and a little bit too much vino bianco, or just rushing into it and getting caught up in the hype of a new release. One of the biggest issues for me at the moment is what I call brand overlap. owning multiple watches from the same brand and even the same model. I have identified a real problem with 4 brands in particular, where I'm the most guilty of this. You guys know I'm a bit of a Rolex fanboy, a Seiko-holic, a Squalerista, and a Tudor, I don't even know, a Tudor head. Now that sounds weird, but anyway, what do you call a person who's a fan of Tudor? This is where it gets really tricky. For example, the classic Squale 1521 Azzurro with the polished case is so drastically different from the newer and vastly more modern forged carbon version, based on the same revolutionary case that made the brand so legendary. Side by side, you can kind of see how can I not have both? But alas, one has to go. And don't even get me started on Rolex, the understated, unpretentious and tooltastic explorer being the complete antithesis of my yellow gold day-date. Also, somewhat ironically, based on the same 36mm oyster case design. It just goes to show you the compelling nature of Rolex and why so many collectors end up with a whole bunch of them in their collections. And this is from Mark Smart. That's a cool name. I wonder if that's your real name. Thank you for your comment, by the way. He says, somehow this video feels like an early stages of a divorce. You can see there's still some attachment, but also growing desire to leave. I can draw comparisons to my own collecting journey from around 50 watches down to 3. That's quite extraordinary. 1 Grail, 1 Sentimental, and 1 Beta watch. That does sound like a perfect combination. Much happier at this level, and collection anxiety has gone. My least worn Rolex, and seriously only a handful of times. I think I can even count on one hand how many times I've worn it this year alone, is my bluesy transitional Rara Submariner. And I had it carefully serviced and masterfully restored by Roleworks. Do check out that video if you want to see the before and after. Their work is amazing. They even have the ability to add steel back onto the case that was previously polished off, which is not cheap to undertake, but gets it to almost new, well, pretty much new condition. And as I said, this is the rarer transitional model with the Rehort engraved complete with box and papers, and I purchased it at the tail end of the pandemic. But the question is it a good time to sell now, with Rolex prices being a bit unsteady? Unless I find a private buyer I trust, I will most likely sell it to Moya Fine Jewelers, like I have done in the past. I sold them my ceramic modern subby, and various Tudors that have come and gone. Could I get a better price from some of these grey market or YouTube watch dealers? Yeah, maybe. But as you guys know, I have been ripped off by several very well-known YouTube watch dealers, and I have always been very anti-grey market since the beginning of the channel 10 years ago. In fact, I'm not aware of any watch dealers on YouTube that are not shady in some kind of way.
The sawdust quiets the gears and lets the engine run as sweet as a nut for a couple of miles.
Daddy, that's cheating.
Of course it's cheating. Nobody ever got rich being honest.
So as you guys know, I've been very anti-grey market since the beginning of the channel. Probably the most important aspect that a lot of people tend to forget. Authorized dealers, people like Moya Fine Jewelers, who are authorized dealers for loads of brands, Shreve Crump & Low, Mark, a Long Island watch, etc, etc. It's quite a difficult thing. These authorized dealer watch sellers are held to a much higher standard, always the most professional. I've found, okay, you might have different experiences, but the guys I do business with, I always go back to. For example, Derek at Moya Fine Jewelers. I've sold and bought many Rolexes and Tudors and I think a few other watches from him. And it's because trust. They're not going to risk doing anything shady and lose that authorized dealership, you know, lose that contract with, you know, Grand Seiko or Vacheron Constantin or whoever it is, right? These are brick and mortar stores, okay? Not always, but most of the time, these are brick and mortar stores. They have higher costs involved. I might not get the best deal compared to some of these online grey market wheelers and dealers on YouTube and online and stuff. But trust, professionalism, I'd take that over getting the best deal any day of the week. Talking of Derek, I did want to address this because I kind of picked his brains a little bit. If I am going to sell some of my Rolexes, is right now with the prices fluctuating, is it the best time? basically the prices are kind of returning to as they were before that, you know, pandemic kind of peak, that madness that happened during the pandemic. I don't think it's a bad time. It's not better than it was, you know, a year ago, obviously. If I'm going to sell a watch, I'm doing it not to make money. I'm doing it, well, to get my money back, but to buy a watch that will give me more enjoyment. And then there's the pressure of making YouTube content with the insidious YouTube algorithm that actively rewards and pushes negativity over quality, childish drama, and the lowest forms of asinine, vapid clickbait content over the genuine and informative, which is actually kind of sad if you think about it, but anyway.
I suspect that we would rather slog through the fever swamp of watch addiction and watch confusion and the open-mindedness of the watch journey rather than find true happiness. I think true happiness with one watch is too scary, too frightening, and has too many implications for the cessation of our presence on social media.
This point was raised by the wonderful Jeffrey McMahon in his highly entertaining, insightful, and always with a sharp, self-deprecating, acerbic wit.
I'm pretty happy with my watches, but you know, I'm still always on the hunt. I'm still that green giant, or the giant from Jack and the Beans. I'm always smelling out I smell a watch.
His enjoyable intellectual, yet at the same time totally relatable rambles about the addictive aspects of watch collecting are perhaps the best thing on YouTube, maybe since Surviving Edged Weapons on Best of the Worst.
Yes! This is the best instructional video ever!
It can be a little disheartening when you spend weeks and weeks working really, really hard on a video and it doesn't get the attention you feel it deserves, right? And that raises a really great point. I'll take the Vertex versus the Longines video. It's not the most hottest watches. In my opinion, they're amazing watches, and I urge you to check that video out because Vertex has got an incredible story behind it. Anyway, how does a channel stay relevant if you don't have a vast collection to pull from, or you're not resorting to, you know, a lowest common denominator derivative content, clickbait all the time? Personally, I don't think I will lose credibility in not having a big collection, because as an enthusiast, I still have a burning passion to learn, and I care about sharing real content that interests me over chasing views or popularity. This is undoubtedly the main benefit of doing YouTube part-time, as you don't have that constant pressure to pay other people's wages. The truth is that most channels my size or bigger have whole teams of editors, publicists, producers, and web specialists that push their content into every search result imaginable. Sadly, that high expense makes them then resort to promoting their own watch store to support that high expense, and thus further compromising all fundamental integrity to their videos. Now, I've said 1,000 times, you can't review a watch and be a watch dealer at the same time. You can only do one or the other. And I never want to be a shilling platform. And as real watch journalism essentially being dead at this point, with the exception of hobby-based independent blogs that I've discussed before that are actually run by fellow real enthusiasts, I think genuine content is needed more than ever before. This also explains why I limit myself to only co-designing or designing a watch once or twice a year. This brings me nicely to the Rolex Explorer, because you see, it was one of my favorite and most worn watches at one point. It inspired almost every single design I've ever worked on. Well, almost. But in a rather fitting twist of the plot, those very watches, because obviously I had some input into it, surpassed the Explorer in terms of vying for my affections. When I purchased my Explorer 8 years ago, nobody really wanted them. No one was talking about them either. Today, they tend to pop up on every other watch channel or Instagram account I try so desperately to ignore. Has my inner contrarian made me fall out of love with it? I'm not actually sure at this point. I'm one of those people that always likes the underdog. When something gets hyped up, for example, a new film release, I will deliberately wait years and it's been forgotten about before I watch it. In fact, the more something is hyped up, I want to ignore it even more. I'm not quite sure what all that's about, but I don't want to get too psychological. This is certainly a topic for Jeff to discuss.
I got off the luxury addiction, but now I'm kind of drawn to these affordable citizen divers. It's like whack-a-mole. You turn one water spigot off, and then there's more turning on at the same time. I can't win.
But this brings me on to a nice question I had. Let me just find it. Here we go. Dear TGV, this is from Mandalore. Shout out to you. Thank you for your comment. Concerning the downsizing of your watch collection, do you include Casios and TGV designed watches in the stated collection? Not anymore, because I've designed enough where it's become a collection of its own, and I'll do separate video probably the end of this year for that, because I do have some new releases coming that I've worked on. As for the Casios, now that is a great point, because the Casio problem, yeah, before you know it, you blink and you got, you know, half a dozen Casios. I feel everyone has a watch brand that they have a weakness for, because aside from the Argos catalogue Proustian nostalgia effect that it has on me, it's conflated by the fact that they are so affordable. And I think it's the only time in the collection where brand overlap doesn't really count. Take for example the recently reviewed MRW watches, packed with a compellingly practical design, used by NASA research pilots, and of course its own cinematic fame. At only around $20, how does one not end up keeping it? Recently I was a bit unwell and had to take medication every 4-hour intervals. The countdown timer with the flash alert on my Mission Impossible DW290 became indispensable. It still has one of the best backlights, under $40. So while resting in bed and not having the full effectiveness of my senses, its ergonomic design and button placement meant I could instinctively use it effortlessly, not to mention that satisfying feeling I get every time I look at it. I think of all the NASA aquanauts that were doing groundbreaking work, and I totally get why it has such a strong following, especially by military personnel. Being cognizant of this Casio addiction, I think is half the battle won. But the great thing is, they also make great gifts as well. So I think I will keep my Casio collection to maybe 2 or 3 pieces. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Should Casios be part of the collection or not? This was a comment on my Instagram. I'll leave a link to the Urban Gentry channel Instagram. And this was on the Sandro Fratini post. DC Bell 5 wrote, did it change your mind or place doubt about getting rid of more than half your collection? Excellent question, thank you my friend. In essence, what he said about following your heart and buying what you really, really love. I do have a Grail watch in mind, and I think I've found it. So now I have a benchmark, a kind of Grail benchmark, if you will. So every possible watch, you know, if it's a Breguet or a JLC or this, that and the other, AP or whatever it is, I will compare to this watch. And a year from now or 2 years from now, when I've saved up enough money, who knows, maybe even sooner if I sell my Rolexes, I will then compare it to this Grail benchmark. The thing is, it's very expensive, it's quite rare. If I mention what it is, I'm not doing myself any favors. I'll leave it to you to guess. Yeah, so I got a kind of Grail benchmark now, and that's how I'm operating. So I'm going to be investigating other contenders. Anyway guys, I'm gonna leave it there. Don't forget to add your thoughts, queries, comments, opinions, all the rest of it down below. Please don't forget to like this video, especially if you want to see more free and independent content like this. I will catch you in the next one. Thank you for watching. Onwards and upwards. Ciao.